All set?
Yep.
Yes. We'll do roll call.
Joanne, business manager.
Extraordinaire.
Jennifer,
Dave Martin.
Kelly Charbel.
Maria Cameron, Jamie Dickey,
Board member Lane Lincoln, superintendent.
Emma Vasola, Director of Curriculum.
Debbie Guerra, Principal, Ludlow Elementary School.
Craig Huffader, Principal, Mount House.
Amber Wilson, you've heard himself.
I don't know, don't we do everybody?
Whatever.
Appreciate Tom.
Oh, and Todd. Todd's online. There we go.
Looks like someone's Julie.
Approval of agenda. I do think we need to add resignation of a board member. Do we want to do that under board comments or new business, or what makes most sense? Does it matter, Lane? No, okay.
Maybe new business, just because we'll then talk about what we need to do next.
Okay. Works for me. Let me add it on here though, because then we'll get there and I'll forget. Do you want to make a motion to approve the agenda then as amended, or are there other changes?
No move.
Any seconds? Thank you. All those in favor? Anybody opposed? Approval of minutes from the August 14th, 2024 regular meeting. Motion to approve them.
So move.
Second. Thank you. Anybody have anything they noticed? All those in favor of approving the August 14th, 2024 meeting minutes?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Yep. Board comments. I would just like to recognize that it is September 11th, and I think that's an important day. And think about when we have stuff like that. Any public comments?
Hi, Puppet. Hi, welcome. Hey, good. How are you? Good. Mary Ellen Maringolo from Ludlow. I was just coming, I noticed that there is on the superintendent's report a staff to student ratio and class size report, which I'm interested to hear. Came to be a part of that, hear that information. And also just because in the spring, we started talking about the importance of, maybe revisiting the class size policy that we have in Ludlow-Mount Holly. And I think that it is important that we have a policy that makes sense for the student population that we serve. And also that the policy is equitably applied across our two schools. Thank you.
And we can move to Anthony's. Sure.
Thank you. And thank you all for your work, and thank you for a good start to school.
Any other public comment? Nope. Okay. All right. Administrators report. Superintendent?
Yeah, then we'll start off with the student to staff ratios. I'll share this. Talk a little bit about what this is, and if this isn't quite what folks want, I also have the raw data that we can look at. You say what's the enrollment look like at each school? Yeah. Is it okay if we do this first and then I'll switch over to the raw data? Okay, sure. Do the ratios, or because I'll switch on to a different screen here in a moment. So just a second. This big and we'll see it. So the request was to create what the ratios were, student to staff. And I kind of broke them down in a couple of different formats. So the blue is Mount Holly, and the orange is Ludlow. So when you're looking at the student to staff ratio, the one that is on top That is, in terms of the staff, it's including the classroom teachers, the para-educators, and the special education teachers as well. It does not include the 3 specialist teachers that you have. You got PE, art, and music. So those aren't included in there. So it was trying to focus in a little bit more on kind of what's happening within the classrooms. The second one down is the number of IEP students per para within each school. So like you'll see with Ludlow, there's 5.2 students per para. And then at Mount Holly, there are 3.7 on average students per para. The third column down is the number of IEP students per SPED teacher at each school. And then the last one is just the classroom teachers, the students, the classroom teachers. Again, it does not include those specialist teachers, the art, the music, and the PD. And so that's what those numbers are. So I don't know if there's any questions or discussions about that. And then we can kind of flip over to the raw data if you just want to take a look at it.
Well, it looks like the only one that's very different is the IEP students to para. I mean, I assume one IEP student to the next could be very different. Is that the underlying reason, or?
They both had basically 2. Ludlow's a little bit quirky because you got the intensive needs program over there. I did not include those numbers because most of them are in and out of district, right? It's not.
So in our intensive needs program that we house at Ludlow, all of the students are from out of district.
Yeah. So it's kind of a specialized program. So those numbers were in there. So technically they have another special education teacher over there, but it's not really serving our students unless we ask for one.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but if it's an IEP, it's driven by the IEP needs of the student, not the needs of the school. So it would be a different. I think the purpose of where this question came from and where it was being asked is that we have a guideline about when a teacher retires or such, whether we're going to replace or not. It should be a discussion at certain points and automatic at others. And so in conversations we had in the spring, it came to light that there's a little bit of a disparity between the 2 schools. And so I'm not sure that this exactly reflects that, but it's also important to note that we can't change students' IEPs based on budget reasons. So it's not, I think that's a little bit of a different.
Yeah, the only way you change that ratio would be to add additional staff. Because you don't have control.
Right, but if it's not based on a student need, we wouldn't do that.
And the other thing about the IEPs, I think it's important for people to recognize is, you might have a special educator that's got 20 students on their caseload, but they are very, low requirement services that are being provided, where another special education teacher might have 3 or 4, but the needs are so high that might be an open.
Can you let Julie, please?
Yeah, I'm sorry about that.
Deb, maybe you can clarify the numbers again, or Craig,
What numbers are you looking for?
it was when we doubled up I don't remember
Classrooms?
specifically, that's why I'm being
So-
vague. There's 2 classrooms at Ludlow
Yeah.
that are like 20 something, whereas the same
So,
issue at Mount Holly's much
This year
less.
in Ludlow, it was in my report, so I'll just jump to
Oh,
those
sorry.
numbers right there. So in our 1-2, we currently have 21 students, 9 of which are on IEPs. And then in our 3-4, we have 22 students with 1 teacher. And then in our 5-6, we have 17 students. We do have a teacher that floats right now and teaches the offset for math. So we have a teacher that teaches 2nd, 4th, and 6th grade math. And I have that teacher also pushing in to support that 21 students in our 1-2.
And then those same numbers, do you have those spread for Mount Holly?
I don't have them right in front of me.
I'm going to put them up.
Oh. Basically, while Lynn's pulling them up, it's roughly like 11 or so in kindergarten. We have 2 1-2s, that are, they're all basically in the 10 to 12 range. We have an outlier class of sixth graders where there's 23 of them. Oh, you have them right here?
So just so it's not too confusing, the reason that you see the colors is that, right, they have multi-grade. So like you see the two yellow under Mount Holly for 1 and 2, that means that grades 1 and 2, you know, are being taught
It's like,
together.
right.
But it looks like based upon the data that I was seeing is that there's two teachers or two groups of 1, 2.
Yes.
Yes.
So there's like a group of 5 first graders and 5 second graders with 1 teacher, and then another group of 5 and 5 with 1, 2 teachers. That makes sense.
So I'm sorry, so there's one teacher for the first and second grade, 5 students, it's a split class, and then the other class has 5 students for the
I
other
think
first and second grade,
I
and they
think
each
the-
have a teacher.
I think the easiest way to think
10.
about it is that there's a standalone kindergarten that has 11.
Okay,
There's 2 1 2 combination. Each of those has 10 kids
oh, 10.
total.
Total.
Same.
So they're 5, so, and they're split, so they have 5 in
First
one
graders
and
and 5
5 in the
second
other. Okay.
graders.
And 1 teacher each.
And it looks very similar in 3 4. And then 5 6 has that larger class.
Can I just clarify, because maybe it's late. If I am the yellow teacher, I am Mrs. Yellow.
Yeah.
I have 10 kids in my class. Some of them are first graders, some of them are second graders.
Yep.
But I have
Half.
10 kids that I am responsible for throughout the day.
Yep.
And Mrs. Green
Yep.
is,
We can
I'm
name
sorry,
them. I mean, it's Darcy and
Yeah.
Suzanne are the first
yeah,
and second grade
that's fine. That
teachers.
doesn't, I just want to make sure that I'm being clear because it's,
Yeah.
so it's this, sorry.
So
it's the
it's almost the
sixth grade
same. It's
That
there's
is
one.
that is the outlier, where in Mount Holly.
Yep.
What do we have?
13 and
5,
22.
35, and then 17 in Ludlow, which I believe was the opposite in the spring.
But remember, the 13 plus the 22 is split up between two
Two
teachers.
teachers.
Whereas in Ludlow, the 10 and the 7, that
It's
5
the
6
single
is
teacher.
1 teacher.
So we have a single 5 6 with 17. We have a single 3 4 with 22. We have a single 1 2 that has 21 students. As opposed to Mount Holly, who has 2 1 2s with 10 each, 2 3 4s with 10 and 11, and 2 5 6s with approximately 17 in each of those 5 6.
So I think that's where this question was coming from. I mean, it was your question, it was David. So is that,
And maybe it'll lead to the question of next year.
said it was
I'm sorry.
children.
Her data maybe
Oh, okay.
a different data.
I'm sorry.
We have people moving this summer, so our numbers may be a little bit different than what you see there.
And it's 1 teacher, 20 students for the 3rd and 4th grade, and it's 1 class.
One class, and it's actually 22 this year because.
I'm sorry, it's 22.
Yeah.
All of Ludlow's 6th graders are on IEPs.
That's the data that I got. I pulled it directly from special education yesterday.
Not all 6th graders are, but a good number, that's gotta be
Yes. So special education wise, Mount Holly is at the total district average, if you're looking at Green Mountain as well as Ludlow-Mount Holly, which is about 30%. Looks like Ludlow Elementary is a little bit higher than that in terms of its special education population. Later I could do the percentage. Oh, 38% for Ludlow.
And as I understand it, in in partial recognition of the fact that you have two large classes, you have the one teacher who does math for the different groups that Mount Holly does not have.
But they
Right.
have two at each grade level, so they do separate
Right,
from
right,
math
right.
instruction. So
Right.
that's
So-
a little bit of creating some equity within that. But, for ELA instruction, our teachers are teaching, they have a class of 22, 21, 17, which is similar to Mount Holly's 5, 6, but in the younger grades, in our 1, 2, their classes are 10. And they do have the ability to change for math, but ELA is taught collectively in each of those grade levels.
And I don't know how predictive the number of preschool students are of what will be in your kindergarten class next year. But if it is predictive, like at Mount Holly, you're going to have 22 that move out at the end of the year, and you would, have 7 that would move in. On Ludlow, you would have about 7 that move out, and you'd have about 5 that would move in. And so that'll, give an indication of potentially what numbers might be next year. But I don't know if that preschool is predictive or not.
Usually it's somewhat predictive,
Yeah.
but you can kind of count on at least
Couple more.
a few more. Is that how you?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a moving target.
But it's not going to be 15 or 20.
Yeah.
It could be just the 7 or 8.
It's,
Probably like 10.
so my thought is that, barring hearing from admin that there's a problem, that this is sort of information going forward for budget and discussion as we move forward. Everybody in agreement to that? That there's no real action to be taken. It was just information that we were seeking.
Well,
Yeah.
well, for action to be taken, for me, in my opinion, I feel like why don't we, can we try to split up the 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, 6 for Ludlow Elementary School and put them back in their place, first graders, second graders, third graders, fourth graders, fifth graders, and sixth graders, and hire more, 3 more teachers.
But
Okay,
you're
but-
saying go away from multi-age and have a classroom teacher at each grade?
Yeah, and hire a teacher for the first grade, its own teacher, and so we need 3 more teachers, right? Because right now there's only 3 teachers, 1 teacher for first and second grade, there's 1 teacher for third and fourth grade, and there's 1 teacher for fifth and sixth grade for Ludlow. There's 21 kids in the first and second grade, there's 22 in the third and fourth, and there's 17 in the fifth and sixth. There's a floating math teacher. I just feel like why don't we just try to get more teachers
So
and put them back in their place, the
The-
classrooms.
the ed funding side of things is that, there would be a local impact, but it wouldn't be as big as we think because it's shared amongst all taxpayers. But it's probably a scenario we can run. A new teacher, if they take family benefits here, is probably about 102,000, 104,000. Yeah. So that's probably shooting at the middle of the pay scale. Is kind of what you're planning on. So, if you're talking three teachers, you're talking 340.
So,
So two
right,
220.
around, okay.
It looks like, one way to think of it being equitable was if you like the mixed grades and you keep the mixed grades, so instead of having a math teacher that floats, if you added 1 more teacher, right, then you'd have 2 for the 1, 2, and 2 for the 3, 4, and 1 for the 5, 6, which is the somewhat smaller class, right?
Right.
And I think it raises the question too of, so in Mount Holly, the big 6th graders will be moving on next year. So as we look ahead a year, do we want to keep keep two small classes or should we be combining them?
And a couple of comments. The one that you just made, don't forget, because I want to kind of come back to it. I would argue on the combined classes, the 1, 2, and the 3, 4, and the 5, 6. That would be a good discussion to have with both the teachers and the admin, just to see instructionally, what they think is well. if these changes happen recently, it might be good to just check the data and say, hey, when we switched over to the combined classes, did the data, performance go up, down, or did it stay about the same? What was the other piece I said, don't forget? Okay. Yeah, I remember. The other piece about whether or not you want your classes small or large, I would argue depends upon the number of students on education. There's a high percentage of students that are on education plans here. And so I would argue, hey, to make sure they're getting their individualized attention, everybody in the class that needs it, is you might want to keep them a little smaller. If you had no students on education plans and I might say, yeah, shoot for 20 kids, but I don't.
One thing I would add is when we were talking in the spring, one thing that was clear was it's easier to make a decision when you've got 13 to 18. What gets hard is when you're in that 9, 10, 11 range to go bigger and just have larger numbers of students in each class. And I think one thing that I would weigh is in the earlier grades, if we were going to err towards smaller class sizes, I would do that in the earlier grades because all of the changes we made to our curriculum and all, I think older kids, like in a 5-6 combo, it's a little more manageable when you have in the mid to upper teens, 20, but I would worry if you were going, like I do worry about the numbers that Deb has right now in 21 and 1-2 and 22 and 3-4, because those are such critical years to be developing strong, literate,
particularly in the primary grades. So
particularly.
when we think about reading instruction and kids having those foundational skills, a bulk of that happens in 1-2.
By the end of second
By
grade.
the end of second grade. So by 3-4, we want our students to have those foundational skills and to be leaders.
Yeah.
So, let's see with floating ideas. We have the floating teacher that could possibly be, if we went this way, where everybody we have a grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, etc. Or if he's taking on certain kids for math, half of them for math, to separate them, then would we want to look at if we kept the multi-grade class, if we think that's important? I'd love to see the data to see if it's helped. But then what about one teacher where they float for the ELA? So then they get at least age appropriate instruction in those really important classes.
Yeah.
I think, I think all of that's conversation, just like we had in the spring around budget. I don't think that we have the ability in this current budget to change this year.
No.
But I think that's Lane and Craig and Deb's sort of goal in budget developing and what do we need for the numbers for next year.
Kelly.
Sorry,
I was
Julie,
just
I
gonna say
can't
that.
see, I'm sorry.
Sorry about that.
Go ahead, Julie.
Hi, I apologize. I joined a bit late. What seems like it is worth further investigation to me is the ratios of students on IEPs in some of these classes. One of my colleagues, I wasn't quite sure who, pointed out that every student in 6th grade in Ludlow is on an IEP. I also see 50% of the students in grade 1, every student in PK4. And then in Mount Holly, 8 of 13 in grade 5. I guess I would, if we're going to start talking about staffing to support the classrooms, the needs of class sizes and high needs classrooms. I guess I would be curious to know whether the designation of an IEP is within, whatever is best practice according to either, statute or educational, best practice. Those seem like extraordinarily high ratios to me. I mean, I don't know what the national average is. But 31 kids out of 81 in Ludlow, and then about 30% at Mount Holly, is higher than I guess I would have expected. But again, I don't have any foundation for these figures.
National average historically and Vermont average historically is 14%. It's gone up a little since COVID. National average is sitting around 18% right now. Across the state, across the country.
And I don't think that all the IEPs that are there are strictly for like math and reading. I think there may be like other pieces that are more like social emotional or like even like physical, physical stuff. Go, yeah.
So, all because I work at the Parent Child Center where we do early intervention. So we work with these babies from birth until 3 years old until the school takes over. And the school actually is a lot more difficult to get an IEP than our organization or our standards by the state. So I feel like if these kids are on IEPs, they are truly needed. And like Jamie was saying, it's not just math reading, it's so much more that comes into play. So
It's also, yes, you're right. And also that when we start to see those high numbers, our plans that Emma talked to us about at length and we approved start to come into play. We're looking at systems and making sure that we're tracking that data to make sure those kids are getting what they need universally so that there aren't the learning disabilities and the discrepancies.
I'm going to talk about that.
Okay. All right. So is this good information and we'll use it again as we're building budget, Craig?
Just one other thing, when we were shifting to multi-age, one major factor was when you have like that outlier, this class now that is sixth graders, several years ago when they were in the earlier grades, that's a really challenging thing for any small school, and you never know when you're going to get that kind of bubble. And so, there's lots of debates about, a single teacher teaching a single grade level versus the pros and cons of multi-age. But in small schools, that is one factor, like not having to change your entire structure all the time, having a consistent structure that you can build on year after year after year that has some flexibility for smoothing out tiny classes and large.
And it's actually a very good point. I've seen a lot of what I would call hybrid schools where they'll have a single teacher per grade unless they've got some funky numbers in there in terms of the kids. So, you might see they have a 1-2 combined and then a three separate, a 4 separate, a 5 and 6 separate, just depending upon what's happening. But like Craig says, is that, that could disturb a little bit in terms of the consistency and the planning that the students are doing for the year, how they deliver instruction.
One other question, even in the short run, I wonder, we can't afford to hire 1 or 2 more new teachers. I wonder if hiring an additional para would be useful, a para who's not focused on special ed, IEP, but just focused on helping you to the first and second grade because it's such a large class in Ludlow.
How many paras are in there right now?
There are a lot because of this high needs of the students that are in there. We already have like 4 or 5 adults
Oh, okay.
in the space. That being said, there are very specific needs within that class, and that's why those people are in there. So to just throw another adult in there would be very overwhelming. And they have a small classroom. Like they're I've allocated 2 spaces and there's a breakout space right next door. So that if there's spillage or groups need to be smaller or need more quiet space, we have the ability to separate them that way. But to just put another para into that room right now with just, we need paras. We're down 3 right now at Ludlow. 2 within the intensive needs program, and we had a need for a 1-to-1 that was new to us this year. So we're still down 3 people, but putting another para in that room may or may not make a difference for the teacher or the students that are in there.
Yeah, got it. Just an idea that sometimes might be appropriate, but sometimes not.
Exactly. Of course, if you want to give us another person, I can certainly put them to good use.
And then you wanted to talk about the voting room.
Yeah, we did a little bit of research, not as much as we could have, but the bill, I know it kind of came as a surprise out of the blue, and I think that's probably the biggest concern that people had. The amount that is there actually seems quite reasonable. Typically with the revote, right, somebody has to pay to redo the ballots. If they use a voting machine, which I don't think was done in this case, which is why the hours are there, right? They were paying for people to be able to hand count it. But like if they were using the voting machine would have to be programmed. I know we own one in the last district that usually costs about $1,000. And then there's also, like I said, there's the cost of printing the ballots and stuff that it doesn't look like they charge us. So there's no voting machine here, but the hours that they put in, it looks like was for the hand.
Yeah. So I was there, it took me about 10 minutes to count.
I had to spend the day there as well. I mean, it's
Oh,
not
yeah,
just.
yeah, right. But I mean, the people, they would need to be there whether there was a machine or not a machine. I assume. Yeah, but, you know, the counting itself, it was a few minutes after 7.
And it does seem like in this district, the other question was, who should be doing it? In the case of this district, it is usually the town.
No, they do it, they know how to do it.
Yeah.
Probably nobody at the school knows how to do it, and certainly nobody on the board.
But I know with like I said, the revotes, it's if there's a machine, it's programming the machine. Whether you have a machine or not, it's printing and creating the ballots and having somebody do that, and then it's counting it however you can do that.
So do we need a motion to approve that, or was that already paid, or
Has not been paid.
it's not?
So if you make a motion, so it's $547.50 for the hours and then another $127.75.
And that's the question that I'll leave up to you.
I'm sorry. So let's say we pay it, do they know next time that they should let us know that we're gonna be in charge if it happens again? And not just give us a bill that we didn't expect and we didn't know we were gonna get?
It'll be on my radar. And what I can do is if we fail on the vote is I'll say, hey, can you do this?
And I think I think because it happens so rarely, people don't always know, but I happen to know because I went through it one other year where it happened several times. And we were billed that as well. It has not happened in a really long time. So,
It wouldn't seem like you need a motion, it seemed like it's management, it's a small bill that gets paid in the normal course of things after we're informed about it. And unless somebody objects to paying it, I wouldn't see a motion as necessary.
sure.
I struggle with a few. I don't want to.
We could ask about it. I mean, if they literally were there for 8 or 10 hours across the entire voting time, it might be reasonable. If they were there for an hour,
I think they have I shouldn't
There
say
was 2
volunteer.
people there for 9 hours, and the rest of them were 5, 4, 4, 5.
Right. I think there are people who are paid by the town to be there, such as the town clerk, but then there are other people who are there to check your name off as you go in and out, who are
I thought that was their job.
Yeah, I don't know. So then does it become our duty to feed them? And what is the food part of that?
127.75. But didn't Dave already go there? The other Dave go there and already think about it, and they said they weren't going to change it. I thought he went there and said something. I don't think he got any more conversation.
Yeah.
I think at this point to just pay it because, and then just for next time,
When it
is there a
comes
way
up,
to
we
tell
can send
them,
it- we can
we're
send
not
it
paying for your
notification.
food or, yeah. You know.
Well, usually in the district, we get,
With them.
we pre-approve, right? The people give us the estimate, they give us what they need, and we say, look, that sounds good. And so that would be the same process we should use here. And like I said, it'll be on my radar. I'm sure it'll be on Cheryl's too now. No.
It's not gonna happen for another 15 or 20 years. It'll be fine.
After 5 years.
Oh,
better
man.
talk.
I love you.
Yeah.
All right, so somebody want to make a motion to make, we'll cover all of our bases? Or not?
Either delegate it to us, or you're gonna pay it, or you're not gonna pay it, or you're gonna pay something.
Yeah, again, I'm comfortable just delegating and saying it's a small bill, and so you think it came and we investigated it and didn't see any reason to object, and so, go ahead.
Elaine will make a decision.
You're good with that decision, Lane?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, then we can move on. Here you go. Principal's report. Whoa. Go ahead, or I don't care.
Usually,
Yeah.
That will go first on our logo. So as we discussed, our enrollment's at 99, and that's down a little bit. We've had an excellent start to the school year. We had an ice cream social on the first day, right after school, which is different than how we've done it in the past. And got a lot of feedback that people loved it. It felt exciting and welcoming to just do it right away. So I think that's going to become an annual tradition. We've begun our MAPS assessments. The window opened this week. Another literacy measure that we do is something called DIBBLES, and we're going to be completing that on Thursday. We are in the middle of a circus residency. It's amazing. It's Troy Wonderly, Big Top Adventures, and it's all week this week. Kids are learning a lot of amazing circus skills, and there's going to be a circus night this Thursday, so tomorrow night at 6. The doors will open at 5:30. There'll be pizza, and we're doing it by donation. No one has to pay, but we're suggesting $5 a person or a max of 10 for a family. It's to help defray the cost of the residency, to help fundraise for it, but everyone should attend. If don't let cost be an object, you can definitely come for free. And that's going to be an interesting format because it's participatory, so families will get to learn skills along with their kids, and their kids will actually be teaching them things they've been learning in the residency, and then there'll also be demonstrations so that that part will feel kind of like a show. So we're excited about that. We have in-service next Friday. It's a building-based in-service. School pictures are coming up in the 24th, Tuesday the 24th. We have our open house is Wednesday the 25th. That's also our book fair week. In early October, our 6th graders will be going with Deb's 6th graders down up to Keewaydon at Lake Dunmore. That's October 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th. We're really excited about that. I've got a candidate. It's not a done deal, but I've got a candidate who seems to be pretty seriously interested in our bus driver position. It would be wonderful. So we're almost fully staffed. Deb and I are working to also fill a 10-hour-a-week position for our homeschool liaison. We have a new lunch server. It's Ashley Clark. She's doing a great job. Breakfast and lunch. The furnace is on Todd's report, so I'll let him, but it's well underway. They've started to remove the old furnace, and that project should be finished in the next week or two. We have a date in October 11th, to get the old oil tank out of the ground. Up front, And our ASP program started Monday and averaging about 30 a day already when I start. So that's just some of the highlights. Any questions I'm happy to answer.
How many homeschoolers do you have?
We have a handful, and some of them like are taking a class here or there, or a band instrument, so they're connected and participating. We have one student who is in the VTVLC, the Vermont. It's like a virtual learning program, and but not a lot, Dave. Just a few.
I'm sorry, quick. Do the homeschool students count in your total of 99?
I believe the way that works is like for small, like the proportion. No, they're not counted in my 99.
They're
I
not.
thought
Okay,
you
so
meant
it's
in our
99
reporting
plus
to the
the
state.
homeschool.
Yeah,
They're only reported if they participate in something at the school. So if they
But
come in
if
for
they are
like PE
taking
or
some
art.
classes, you're saying that they take a few classes here and there.
yeah, but I don't count them in the 99 because
Gotcha.
it's such a small fraction
99
compared
plus.
to a full enrollment. Doesn't bring that much revenue, but we do it because we want people to feel, welcome and involved.
Right.
Good question.
Thank you.
Yes.
So our enrollment this year is 82. I had gone over those numbers a little bit earlier. That includes 4 students in our intensive needs program currently. We too had a back to school social. It was on September 5th, and our PTG provided Kona shaved ice. So we had a great time on the playground and great socialization. We were able to clean out some of our storage closets and get rid of some older books, and families went home with games and puzzles and really enjoyed that free giveaway. On October 11th or 10th, the fire department in Ludlow is going to come with the trailer. They have to reserve the trailer years in advance, and we get to have it at Ludlow Elementary School this year. And that will happen, like I said, October 10th. We have our open house coming on October 1st, and we'll run that in conjunction with our book fair. So book fair will be 3 days, and we'll have that night event in conjunction with our open house, where families can visit classrooms and get a sense of what students are beginning to learn. And after school program is up and running, we too have about 30 students who are participating throughout the week. Today, our 3rd and 4th graders for Patriots Day took a walk down to the wall in Ludlow, the commemorative wall, the 9/11 commemorative wall, and they were able to visit that today. I'm very excited. We're in the process of planning for our key waiting trip for our 6th graders, and that's October 7th through the 10th. What buildings and grounds, we're in the process of securing quotes for fire suppression fluid for the kitchen. Fire marshal came in last year, and it was the one thing that we just couldn't nail down, but because we're actively seeking, we are still in the process of trying to get quotes. We had a couple of quotes, and then they refused to do the work collectively, so we're still in the process of doing that. And I too have started the Dibbles assessment. Ludlow is finished, and that is the dynamic indicator of basic early literacy skills assessment. So we're done. I have our spring data. I don't have our fall data yet because we just finished. NWE MAPS assessment also started this week, but we're holding off until end of September to give that assessment, and we'll hold off a little bit later for our kindergarten students this year. And Lane had asked me to bring some data, so I have a graph for you of our spring data, including both our VT-CAP data and our NWEA, and then for reading, that was for math, and for reading I have the Dibbles as well. I just remind you that our sample size is very small. So it's a collective total and the numbers are there. So I can pass those out. They're tied directly to our continuous improvement goals. And we had our first data team meeting yesterday and our WIN groups are up and running as of Tuesday last week. So we're really making sure that we're filling those gaps and holes, and hopefully come springtime, my grass will look a little bit different.
And I was able to connect with them pretty quickly about the request on the data. Greg, I was planning to talk to at the at our admin council, but I had forgotten the admin council.
Oh, no
That's-
problem.
that's-
I can do it next
Is
week,
the
the
VT
next
cap
one.
embargoed? I have the data, but it's not like specific or anything like that. So I can hold off and not hold this up.
I would say you could share it with the board, but it couldn't be discussed beyond that.
Okay.
Also, I
Sounds totally.
remember I mentioned to you that the open house.
Actually, Lane, this is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is Julie. I actually think, from what I recall, from what the state has said about VTCAP data, they consider board meetings publicly sharing aggregate data, and they don't want us to do that yet.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's what I was saying is the board members can look at it because we're allowed to use it for internal decisions, but they cannot share it publicly. So they could look at the
So-
sheets.
So they could look at it and we could take it back.
Yeah, and you can't discuss it openly here.
Okay.
Or we can just wait till
Why don't we not muddy the waters and
Yeah, very good
confuse-
point.
Yeah, I don't wanna have embargoed information in my head.
Yeah.
I've got
Alright,
enough
I'll wait
issues in
till
my
I-
head.
It's not like the state is having you.
Right, right. But, I mean, I guess we had talked about having some data, obviously goes with the continuous improvement plan and whatnot, but I think, knowing kind of a little bit more about the meat of what's going on is better. and
So I
that's
was
why-
ahead of the curve.
Right, but I don't want embargoed
Yeah,
data in my
good
brain. Thank you. All right, so, any questions for Deb, other than embargoed information? Nope, we're good, all right.
And Dave, we have about 5 homeschoolers that join us for various things.
I think that takes us to the curriculum report.
Abby, you know how to do it? It's not giving me the request.
Oh, I'll send
There you go. Oh, should I?
that's your choice.
We'll leave them alone.
Okay. So I tried to share this at our August meeting, but I think the technology wasn't working, but this is a new report for September. So just so everyone's aware, I have a written report that's on the TRSU homepage that I put up prior to the TRSU meeting. That's written, and then the board members can ask me questions. I had heard from not necessarily this board, but the GM board that they liked it in writing and to have the presentation. So I'm accommodating both. So you have the written report there prior, as well as this presentation is uploaded to on the TRSU website. So similar to years past, I'll be presenting on what our students are learning, how our students are doing, and what we are doing to continuously improve teaching and learning. For this focal point for September, I'm focusing on real social emotional learning and how it relates to what that looks like in the context of our classrooms in TRSU. And all of the reports are going to explicitly connect to our continuous improvement plan overall in TRSU. We also have the school-based continuous plans and action plans, but we have the TRSU one too, so it'll connect to TRSU. So one of my goals as a professional here in TRSU is I'm participating in a cohort where we're learning about how we can be more strategic and how schools improve. This is a framework that the Upper Valley Educators Institute has created to kind of showcase the 5 essential supports for how schools improve. And you'll notice what is in the center. Anyone? The core is a triangle, and it's the instruction. So anything that we do in schools, in order for them to improve, where the most changes occur is in the heart or in the instruction, what's happening for students in the classroom. So all the things that we do, if it's not affecting the instruction of the students in the classroom, we're not leading to any real improvements, because it really has to impact the through line for students. So in this case, I'm sharing this because in it, it's really deeper learning, equity-centered pedagogy. And so this is really a stance that is not a quick fix. It's really a root cause. So change happens slowly, but really strategically. And you'll also notice that there are these other 5 circles that essential supports our professional learning collaboration, positive school climate, family and community connections, guidance, coherent instructional programs, guidance. That's really my domain, which is curriculum. And all of this leads to improved social, emotional, and intellectual outcomes. And so with that, I'm going to focus in this presentation on how we're really kind of zoning in on goal number 3, which is closing the gap in academic performance. And I think this is surfacing kind of your discussions earlier around marginalized students versus historically privileged students. So how can we close that gap academically in the next 2 years? So we're going to be really thinking about how we can do that from an equity standpoint. So that being said, we had an amazing educator. He actually was one of the writers of the Universal Design for Learning. He wrote this book called Equity by Design. His name is Mirko Chardin. He came on at our opening in-service on August 22nd and spoke, and really his sentiment was really, school is about the kids. So focusing human-centered needs, less about the system, but really we can change the system when we think about focusing on human needs. And school is really about the kids. So really he's asking educators or inviting them to challenge their biases, examining power and privilege in schools, and viewing diversity as essential for progress. He also really worked with teams of educators in the afternoon to unpack what UDL is. And just to give you some context for this, this is our framework for our multi-layered systems of support. And that last bullet point I've highlighted. It says all instructional planning and collaboration is based on Universal Design for Learning and TRSU high leverage practices. And based on a data analysis that we did as part of the administrative team last year, it was really a grow area for us, understanding how we're designing universal instruction in our core layer. So hence the reason why Mirko came and why we're really working into the coming year on how we can improve that using high leverage practices. Here's, and this is interactive also, if you want to learn more, it's on the website. So there's this universal design really thinks about learner agency, and being really intentional and purposeful and understanding who your learners are in your environment. And so you're designing the instruction for engagement, representation, and action and expression. Here are a snippet of our high leverage practices that we really are inviting teachers to really think critically about using over the course of this year, but we actually instituted this about 3 years ago when we adopted, around the same time where we adopted the new literacy curriculum. And I wanted to just pull out from that August 22nd in service, these were some of the takeaways that our teachers took away. So this was really kind of a synthesis of what they said. So participants, when asked what essential knowledge are you leaving with today related to building an equitable system for all students? So participants highlighted the importance of UDL and the integration of social emotional learning and creating equitable, accessible instruction. Second, a key takeaway was the shift from building self-esteem to fostering self-efficacy in students, helping them develop confidence in their abilities. Third, collaboration across disciplines and a commitment to self-awareness regarding biases recognized as essential for breaking down barriers to equity. I'm going to highlight that as I move through the presentation. And overall, participants left with a renewed focus on building strong relationships with students and centering on their needs. So positive feedback overall and really powerful as well. So the next part is what are our students learning? So in relation to that, you may have seen, some of the board members may have seen this graphic before. I used it in a presentation a few years ago where I was talking about our ruler approach to social emotional learning in our K-6, and now the 712 has adopted it as well. And I wanted to just highlight how we in TRSU are really trying to think about how we can develop the whole child, not just the skills and the knowledge to create our portrait of a graduate. But I wanted to call out that in the cloud, it says when a flower doesn't bloom, you fix the environment in which it grows, not the flower. So thinking about how we can change our systems in our schools and and to create more inclusive spaces. So it really takes slowing down, thinking really deliberately and strategically about what we can do in the context of our schools. So what teachers are doing now is really laying those foundations of thinking how I can create the environment where my students can thrive in my classroom to be able to acquire the knowledge and the skills over time to meet those proficiencies and be successful. So they're focused on respect and inclusivity, ensuring every student feels included regardless of race, gender, religion, or learning abilities, that there's trust and safety, collaboration and participation, that there are positive relationships, shared values and norms, engagement and motivation, conflict resolution, teaching skills and mediation, and emotional and social learning. And I would argue that this is all the way through into adulthood, but certainly not just focused on our primary students, but K through 12, as we're all learning and growing as human beings. That this is something that's really foundational, as foundational pieces of our human development. So how are our students doing and what are we doing to continuously improve teaching and learning? This was a graphic actually Julie had used probably last year throughout. We have satellite data, which is really the district and building level achievement scores. So some of the scores that we were just talking about, like our VTCAP scores and even DIBELS data, which more is actually map data. Then we have our map data, which is looking at closer at learning certain trends and pointing in different direction, looking at skill gaps. And then we have this street level data, which is qualitative and experiential assets-based data. So a lot of these this kind of learning assessment to how students are learning is really this street level data that we're trying to collect. So we are piloting, we will be piloting. One of the goals is to adopt a universal social emotional learning screener for grades K through 6 and 7-12. We do not have one in TRSU. So this is something that the admin team has actually been slowly working on, called accumulating different assessments that we might be able to use. And we're going to be planning a pilot this year at the SU level to be rolled out in the schools. And so why would we do this is to be able to identify areas of need, track growth, understand student perspectives, identify students who may need support in this area, and as well as reduce disproportionality in special education. Also, I think this is really important that this pyramid shows student voice. So having those kind of quantitative and qualitative understanding the student's perspective and the student's stories. If you notice in the triangle, when it's adult-led, it's consultation. So you get student surveys, focus groups, one student at a time. But if you get up to transformative student voice, students are participating in school policy, students are participating in transforming school cultures, centering equity and promoting students' social political development. This is kind of really what we want to get to, is really where students are becoming more part of the process. I know in Ludlow-Mount Holly, it's K6, but they still can be part of the process. But we want to really be trying to get as much student voice as we can. So that's something that I'm going to be working on over the next year or two to try and figure out how we can be more strategic in getting students input on things. Other things that we're doing to improve are, so essentially I can't share with you how students are doing. It's the beginning of the year and we don't actually have a universal screener that says that. So it's meeting both. We actually are working through the AOE under it's called SPDIG, but it's the Staff Professional Development Grant. And it's the goal of it, we started last year, we're working mainly at Green Mountain, but it's rolling out into the elementary schools this year too, to increase the percentage of students with disabilities who score proficient or above on local universal reading and mathematics screening assessments. So we're really focusing on thinking about how we can use professional learning, looking at analysis and implementation of the data, to create more effective assessments, instruction, and intervention delivery systems. So we're really working on how we can create more of a robust environment. As well as, I mentioned Ruler, we're continuing with going deeper in different schools and implementing how Ruler is being rolled out, which is our social emotional learning program. It's a program, it's not a curriculum. And also, lastly, we are partnered with Great Schools Partnership, and we're going to be running a community of practice with administrators and also with teachers who would like to be part of it. And the focal point really is going to be collaboration across disciplines to gain this commitment to self-awareness regarding biases, where we recognize it's essential for breaking down barriers to equity. So I pulled out what the teachers' takeaway was from the beginning in service, and we worked the coach from Great Schools Partnership to look at the data to say, okay, this is really something where we can create more of a community to kind of unpack some of these things and create change that way. That will start in November and run through the end of the school year. Sorry. Thank you. Any questions?
That was a good question. In the beginning, you mentioned the goal of reducing the disparity in progress between different groups. So obviously, we don't have much racial or ethnic diversity in Ludlow-Mount Holly. What are the groups that?
Well, the state has actually identified Two Rivers Supervisory Union for disparities in free and reduced lunch, as well as on students on IEPs.
Okay.
So those are have been historically marginalized from the state perspective.
And so you'll be keeping data on those groups and then comparing how they did in the past to the current years.
And that's something that I think the principals are also doing with their leadership teams to think about change ideas of really thinking strategically about how we can support students who have been historically marginalized, and how we can give them the most because they need the most, even and make sure we're meeting all students' needs.
Okay.
The test, as I'm looking at it, getting the screeners and using our own testing to determine this data is going to be critical, because I was going in to the state data and trying to pull out those subgroups and what was happening to them over time. The state data it's non-existent. They might have data on grade 7 1 year and grade 2 the next year, but there's nothing consistent. I don't know if that's from COVID, but it seemed to be happening years after COVID had died out. So I think it's wonderful that they're working on kind of internal measures.
Julie?
Thank you for that presentation. To me, it's all very impressive, and the sort of data-based approach to education is, I think, really the gold standard. There was a slide in the presentation where you talked about the community values. Do you recall which one I'm talking about? There were maybe 6 or 4.
Was it through the ruler approach?
Yeah.
With the garden graphic?
Can you put no, it wasn't the garden graphic. Can you put it yeah.
We go back here. Maybe it was at the beginning. Sorry.
Oh wait, go back. Sorry. Nope, up. Key foundations. Yes. So is this, these sort of values, does this represent a departure or a change from how our district has operated in the past, or is this a restatement of what are the existing sort of foundations?
I would say both and. I think it's probably in some happening more routinely. Typically, I would say from a primary standpoint, these things were kind of routine in primary, like K6, I would say maybe even K4 standards. But I think one of the critical elements is that ensuring that even though we're teaching social skills in the primary grades, that those developmental needs, those social emotional needs don't stop when we even graduate high school. The diversity in core human needs is something that we all need. And so it's really new, I think, to some environments, but not so new to others. But I think it's important reframing that this is why it's to educate the kids, and the kids are whole humans. And so not to negate the social emotional needs of those students and how the environment can impact that.
Can you talk a little bit about the strategies for then like level setting these foundations in the classrooms? I'm thinking in particular about, the LMH schools, K-6 populations. And what are some of the strategies to reinforce, or how do you, embrace these values in the actual work of teaching kids?
It's an excellent question. And so one of the things that happens is that at the beginning of the year, you will surface what the collective feelings, for instance, that the students want. So I actually have seen in a couple of classrooms at LMH where they're actually having the students create like a class name, for instance. I think it's the Persevering Penguins, or I think it was the class of 2024 in one. So they were creating these class names. So this identity as a class, but at the same time, the teachers are having the students think about how they want to feel in school. So there's this collective shared expression of how they want to feel, and then action behaviors that they will do for themselves, but also for others to make others feel that way. And it seems that rather basic, but this is something that we even do with adults. And then it doesn't just live like that's like a one and done. The goal is to think really critically through morning meeting times, through community circle time, through closing circle time, to think, are we living our values? Are we living these collective values? And usually it's about 3 to 5. And most oftenly, the research shows that it's usually having to do with trust, safety, and the words can be different, belonging, connection, joy. Usually it's around those 3 to 5 areas.
Same as in the workplace, like same as like the human experience, right? Like, yeah. Thank you very much. This is fantastic. I'm really encouraged and hopeful about the sort of work behind this and how it will impact our students.
You're talking about the SCL screener possibly. How's that funded? Is that a grant? Is that?
Well, that'll be a part of us trying to see what one we want to go with and how we would fund it with costs, because some of them are free.
Free's good. Is that,
Yeah.
thinking?
Yeah.
That was as I was thinking. I'm like, oh no, if this is another like item on the that we have to think about budget wise, we need more support in like ELA over here in first, second grade.
There are a lot of rather research-based ones that are free that the state has recommended, and that's what we're going through. And that'll be all part of the pilot, and that'll be one of the factors that we certainly.
Any other questions for Emma? All right. I think that means Todd.
All right. I'm going to try to be fairly quick. Like Deb said, at Ludlow, we are her and Mike are working on the hood and the install system. We're in good graces with the fire marshal as we keep them updated. They all know that just finding contractors, is hard right now. So as long as we keep them informed, we're in good graces with them. At Mount Holly, the big story is the boiler. That is moving along, at a very good pace. The project manager has been there from EEI every day, keeping Craig and Al and myself extremely well updated. The old boiler is now gone. It is off the campus. So just a couple things that I want to make sure the board knows. They've been keeping Craig very, very much in the loop. There's gonna be 30 minutes to an hour interruption in water and power. We're gonna work with Craig to make sure that happens at the end of a school day, so there are no students in the building. There may be some staff in the building, but Craig will keep everybody updated with that. It's just inevitable when they put the new boiler in. Irving is slated to install the new propane tanks on September 16th. They confirmed that today. Startup is still on pace for September 19th. So they're hoping to have the new boiler up and running by the 19th. Craig mentioned the removal of the oil tank out front is on schedule for October 11th, which is an in-service day. So there'll be staff in the building. They did that in case there's any other issues, they can come in and work on it on Saturday. We are gonna pump out the fuel from that tank and bring it down and put it in the tank at Ludlow. I spoke with Mike and he has plenty of room down there. We don't know how much is in there, 500-600 gallons, and we're just gonna transfer it from one school to the other. A couple of things that EEI has done that wasn't in the project plan, and kudos to them. There was a problem with the chimney. The existing chimney is in pretty bad shape, so we made a decision day before yesterday when I was there. We're gonna go up through the roof. It's a very small opening for new exhaust for the propane boiler, and they are going to cap the old one for us at no extra expense. I think Jamie just said it, free is always good. They're going to do that for nothing. And I asked them to put in a dehumidifier down there. They're going to do some work to close off from where they think some moisture is coming from, and the moisture is what caused us the majority of the problems in that space from years before, and they're going to close that space off, plus put a dehumidifier in there to help alleviate those problems. So we're doing everything we can to make sure that we don't run into any of the old problems that we had before. So that project is going along extremely well, and they don't see where we should be. We should be on time or ahead of schedule and on budget. And that's all I have.
Just for anybody who's out there and watching this later on Okemo Valley, I just want to make it clear that if we pump gas from one tank to another, there's no money issue because we are one district and one budget, and I don't want people to start thinking we're giving away our goods here.
Yeah.
Am I correct?
That's correct. Yep.
Any questions for Tom? This is very exciting after years of hearing about it forever and ever. Thank you.
It really does.
Oh, sorry, Julie, I didn't see it.
No, you preempted my comment. I really appreciate your perseverance. This has been quite a road. So thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Cheryl.
So we have July and August financial in the folder. I have done a little synopsis that I will have in the folder so other people can see, but I will essentially tell you what's on it. So July and August really reflects our year-round employees and some of the summer services, the materials to clean and get the classrooms up and running, as well as like the first assessment. So there's not a lot of money that we've spent thus far. This year, to remind you that we're going to pull food service out into its own fund, 6005. That was a request of child nutrition, and so we've done that. I think that'll be a good thing to be able to see that program what our costs really are. Sometimes it gets hidden in the general fund. So our first payroll was September 6th. Everybody got paid. If they didn't get paid, they didn't say anything, so we're just gonna. RHR Smith, our auditors, are currently on site. We're working on the 2003, 2004 audit. Seems to be going pretty well so far. They've been in for a couple days. Just started getting 23, 24.
I missed the 20 part and I was like, we're going back 20 years. Right. Now I'm with you.
No, 2023, 24.
Thank you.
Yeah, it seems to be going pretty well, so I'll be happy when you're on. So, Debbie Craig, do you have our sub-grant recipient awards that I need for you to sign for food service and our before we go to it? No?
Yeah. Questions for Sharon? No? Good. All right. Old business, limited school choice. Do you want to?
Yeah, there was, it was discussed a little bit during the last board meeting, but folks, either because we didn't get stuff out in the way that people normally get it, didn't feel that they had had the time to prepare. We did have a little bit of a discussion around it. I had pointed out a couple of kind of wording mistakes. There are references back to when there were more districts here. And those are things that, if the board is okay with, I can easily change in there. There was also a discussion around the idea of how to determine if requests to kind of change which building that you're in should be granted. And talked a little bit about the idea that without a protocol, to be able to make those decisions can seem unfair, right? If you have a protocol in place and then everybody's following the protocol, then the results for similar circumstances should be the same, and that's what brings fairness into the system. And so what I attempted to do between then and now is the draft that you have in front of you is for, a potential protocol that we would follow when there's a request. Change between schools. So, but a lot of it is about the idea. Usually if somebody is making a request to change between schools, it's because of a hardship of some sort. And I gave a couple of examples in there, and those aren't the only things that sometimes happen. You have one example. You have a student that's been here at Mount Holly for 3 years. There is some social emotional issues, and so they've developed a really good relationship with the staff here. They've become accustomed to the routines, and the parents have to move to another town. And in that case, they might request to say, hey, is it okay, because it's better for my child. It would be a hardship for them to move given the circumstances to be able to stay. In other cases, sometimes a smaller or a larger setting is better for some children. So it allows flexibility for that. In other cases, we have special educators that may be specialized in a certain area, and it would be nice to allow the children to be able to move, to be able to take advantage of that if that only exists in school. So those are some examples of what hardships might be. Their protocol there is our way of how we would kind of evaluate that. If a parent has a request, it would come to the principal of the school that they're currently in residence with. That principal would connect with the principal potentially of the school that they're looking at. They would have a pretty deep discussion. Is the things that the parents are telling us, are they accurate? If we allow this move, is it going to affect the enrollments, right? If they're leaving a class here to go to Ludlow, say, is it going to leave the class under-enrolled here? Or is the class that they might be entering there already have 22 students in it, and it would be, a bad idea to allow that change to happen. So they would go through a process of evaluating that and then kind of report back to the parent that, yes, this could be accepted. If the parent was not happy at that point in time with whatever the decision was, then they would have the ability to appeal it to the superintendent, and then the superintendent would have the final word. That doesn't mean that they couldn't bring it to the board if they feel that, I as a superintendent or whoever may be in this position, if they felt that, they were doing something, unethical about that decision. But in terms of just, examining the data and making a reasonable decision based upon what's there.
So I have a question.
Yep.
Because maybe so this is the documentation that Kelly sent me. I don't know if everybody got it. The sort of the back
that's your
history,
current
yeah, the
policy.
38 page is the current program in a whole.
Yeah, so there's
This would be
that's a protocol.
the protocol when.
It could be, it's a draft, we could change it anyway.
Right, but what I'm trying to understand is, so if a parent were to go through this process for whatever reason, maybe it's mid-year and something happens, or maybe it's they didn't get chosen in the lottery through the standard rules that are set forth here, then this would kick in? Okay.
Or we could use it for the whole process. It sounded, and I apologize if I'm mistaken, it sounded like the board didn't want to be in a position to be having to make decisions like that if the parent came in and made a request. And so that's
Yeah, I mean, I think that's our ultimate goal, is that it should be clear enough that it's not becoming a board issue yearly, which it has been recently. I think that was our goal.
And I haven't been there for what those look like, so I'm taking my
Right.
best stab.
Right.
But if this were something the board were interested in, the next step would be to bring it back to the admin team, take a look at it, see if they're in agreement that it should be good.
I think personally, this needs to be tightened up before we get to this, but maybe I'm wrong. And I think this might just be that we need to be fresher in what's in here than we have been since it hasn't been updated. And I guess I would like to see that first. Does that make sense to everybody?
Do you want me to prepare to kind of have I can do a presentation about what, maybe at the next meeting about, what's currently in there and what we recommend. It sounded like the biggest discussion from last time was this idea about, how many students should we be, in the original exchange, how many students should be.
And I know, I mean, I'll be honest, I haven't read all 38 pages of this recently. But like there was a section in there about how families would have priority. And I know in a recent situation, and it was public, so I can say it, it was a set of twins, right? That's a little bit different and a little bit harder to predict what happens. But just making sure that I think this document is the priority before we start working on additions to it, if that makes sense.
And so if folks are in agreement, then I would recommend that, what I can do is I can come in at the October meeting, do a presentation about what currently exists and what kind of our recommended changes are for discussion and to see, if the board's approving of that or if they would like to see that changed or altered in some way.
And I'm looking at Craig because I think historically he and I are probably, Cheryl would have been here, but I think, and Amber's been here forever too. So just knowing what sort of our thought process as we were going through, and I think that would be helpful in making sure everybody's on the same page.
Yeah, no good.
Making it simpler for okay, so no later than March 2nd, and just no later than the first Monday of March or something simple so that it doesn't have to be updated every 3 years.
Well, that's also another question is, like you're talking about students that are twins, and that could be considered as a hardship. Do you want to stick primarily with what you currently have, or do you want it to be more on a rolling basis where we consider? Like if people have a legitimate hardship, should they be able to come in at any point in time and say, hey, this is going on, this was not a circumstance, 2 months ago, but it's happening now. Do we want to open it up to be able to have a discussion about that, or do we want to stick with it?
I think personally, I'm just speaking for myself, but I think that's a discussion you guys should have and then tell us why you think what you think, because I think there's pros and cons to it all, and you're the experts, not necessarily us, and I don't think we can predict everything that's going to come down the road, and at some point I think we do need to have some tighter boundaries so that we're not always making I think it's a privilege to have this program that many schools don't have. And so that's,
Part of it too is me understanding the board's needs and expectations. So this is actually really helpful. Because I'm quite happy. I like working on this.
If I can, my preference would be to not have the board be a appeal beyond the superintendent. I think the final appeal should be the superintendent.
I think it would make it simpler. Is that a reality though? I mean, is there, and I'm asking the question. So if a parent isn't happy with a teacher, they go to the principal. If they're not happy with the principal, they're going to go to the superintendent. If they're not happy with the superintendent, they're going to come to the board, regardless of whether it's this school choice program or if it's just they're not happy about some situation. So that's not a reality, but if we can.
Yeah, then I think, but then I think but if we have a policy saying that the superintendent is the final level of appeal, someone comes to the board and we say, our policy is clear, it sounds like it's really difficult what you're going through, but we can't grant relief to you in this particular circumstance because we have a policy that the superintendent's the final say.
Yeah.
We don't have a role in this question.
Yeah, I think I explained it poorly. The only time that, in that case, if that were the board's policy, that they would come to the board with a complaint is to say, hey, we think the superintendent or the principals were unethical in making this determination. And so that somebody can always come to the board for because that's your oversight function. But in terms of saying, oh, I don't like what Millington decided, it stops at the superintendent. So that's perfectly okay. Yeah.
Yeah, but it may be that as we look at the policy, even though we have guidelines, that we want to give you a little bit more discretion so that if somebody doesn't fit into exactly what's written down, but everyone, you think it all makes sense. You don't have to come to the board and say, oh yeah, no, we want to do one more person or we want to do something, Yeah, as long as it's written flexibly enough that you have guidance, but it's sort of not a steel wall that you can't cross. Your challenge.
So we have a direction. We're good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I appreciate the clarity.
The next thing is new business, which was policy governance, which sort of goes along with the TRSU report. So what I think we put on here, I last month seemed a little discombobulated, and that might have just been me. But Julie and Dave enter, and this all mushes together. So I'm also going to mention that we do have the addition to our policy, to our new business was that we had a board member resign, which was Dave. And so at the board retreat that Julie and Dave were the only ones of us that attended, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
Yeah, me, Dave.
Oh, you, Dave. I'm sorry. I thought it was the other Dave. I'm sorry. Okay. There was a discussion about policy governance. It was my understanding through the Zoom meeting that it didn't seem like this board was ready to jump on that ship, but more let TRSU do it and see where it fell and what we wanted to place our priorities elsewhere. So before I speak for us, I want to make sure that that is accurate.
And that was my understanding, that the Green Mountain Board has historically had more difficulties in town, whereas our relationship with superintendents, I don't think we've often crossed into trying to micromanage and, and so it's less critical. But again, I think if TRSU and Green Mountain start moving, if you just keep us informed about what they're doing, and we look at, if you all write a policy, and we can look at it and say, hey, yeah, we like that, let's do it. Without adopting the whole procedure, which seems to take a lot of training and a lot of time.
They're, just for the update on it, they are having, a trainer, from BSBA, the Vermont School Boards Association, come in on the 27th of the month. They're probably going to spend 6 to 8 hours, kind of doing a quick overview of policy governance again, and then they're going to go right into trying to develop the policies of it. So that's kind of where it is then. My impression is that it'll probably be adopted by, both Green-Mountain and, the TRSU.
That's what it sounded like. And to add to what Lane just said, so TRSU seems like they're going forward. Green Mountain seems like they're going forward. There is the meeting on the 27th that I am unable to attend. Julie, are you able to attend? No. And then Dave
I'm
Venter.
not.
Right. And then Dave Venter is our alternate who is no longer on the board. So we don't have an alternate, which means our board will not have representation on the TRSU board at that meeting where they're making this decision. So I don't know.
You could if somebody were interested, you could revote to, assign somebody to that.
Mr. Alternate, isn't Jamie the alternate on the PRC?
No, I think Dave is. I think it's Julie and I, and then Dave was our alternate. I'm not, am I mistaken?
There should be 3, and then an alternate.
Oh, goodness. And it's not on here. I thought it was.
Well, is the 27th a warned meeting? Will they be taking votes?
It's going to be a work session,
It's a work
correct?
session.
But it's open. It would be open for people to join. Anybody could go. Any one of us could go. But
Will there not be a quorum? Does it matter?
sorry, 27th
27th.
of September.
It's a Friday. For some reason, people were staying when they were checking Fridays.
All right, so you didn't appoint one because we didn't have on the board. So there's no appointed alternate.
There is no alternate. Thank you for finding that out. So
It
yeah,
probably
that-
doesn't matter if they don't have a quorum, if they're not going to be taking any votes and it's not a warned meeting, right?
Well, yes, I guess they couldn't take action, but we wouldn't have the benefit of knowing and
Got
having
it.
participation either.
Sure.
And I don't know how to alleviate that. What I was told was that our representation at the retreat deemed that was a good day and people were going to be there. Unfortunately, it sounds like that, things change, life happens. And I don't know if nobody can be there. I don't know if I can go back to Adrian and figure out an alternate plan. It would be like
It'll be during
all
the
day.
It'll be during
All
the day.
day.
It's-
Right.
It'll be between 6 and.
And where is it?
We're planning, but I got to talk with Todd about that. We were planning at the Green Mountain Union High School Media Center.
And that's a school day, right?
Yeah.
So it would be 6, 7 hours. Well, let me know.
Okay.
I need to be there.
Okay.
Because my daughter goes to school there, so.
Drop her off,
I guess.
hang out in the media center. Yeah.
They're actually a pretty fun group, and the trainer is exceptional. If you decide, or anyone here decides, anyone can be there. If you decide that you do want to participate, let me know, because we'll make sure that we order the materials. Just so you have.
Do we need to officially declare?
I think a resident.
To her?
Oh,
I don't know.
If she is going to be your alternate, it should be a vote.
So do we want, it's sounding to me like we're really mushing 3 things together, and I apologize, but they really go hand in hand. So accepting Dave's resignation would be step 1.
I think it would be appropriate, but I'm not sure if it's necessary. Because
Okay.
resignations are unilateral.
Right. So, Dave's been on the board a long time, more consistent but probably for 25-ish years. Yeah, so regretfully accepting his resignation and thanking him greatly for his service. Now we're full of the thing. Thank you, Dave. I hope you're watching. And then I will continue to be on the TRSU. Julie will continue to be on TRSU. We're supposed to have 3. I thought it was 2 and an alternate. Why am I thinking that?
It's 3 and an alternate, I think.
So then the question would be, does this board have the opportunity tonight, because it's not warned as such, to take a motion to add a 3rd member and or an alternate?
It's appropriate to do the motions to change the agenda at the beginning. But I don't think it would be a violation as long as the full board voted to change the agenda. So.
Change it down.
Yeah. So in other words, you're asking, I apologize if I'm thinking.
You're asking us to add an agenda item under new business while we're in new business.
Yeah.
Or would it be just appropriate to appoint as a
participant.
mentor, or not mentor, that's not the word I want. What is it?
Interim.
Interim, thank you. That wasn't the one either, but we'll take it. Interim for this committee, a member of the committee. That's the M word I was looking for.
Because this is related to policy governance, and policy governance is your topic, I think you're fine. There we go.
Well, and one possible motion would be to authorize the chair to appoint an additional alternate if necessary.
For the purpose of the policy governance.
Well, or even for for that meeting, sure.
And then my recommendation would be that on the next agenda, to actually have it as an agenda. Because traditionally, if you're gonna add additions, they happen at the very beginning.
Right, and we had that opportunity and we didn't do it. So I want to make sure that we're doing it.
But I think if you want to assign, for that specific purpose in that meeting, because it's related to policy.
Under policy, right.
Yeah.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is that hopefully somebody will make a motion that Maria will be assigned to the policy governance committee that is a part of the TRSU, so that the LMUHS board has representation as it currently does not. Does somebody want to make that motion?
I'll make that motion. Nicely.
Or Amber.
Policy governance committee.
And then once Amber has it, we can get a second.
Can I read this back to you, make sure I
Please.
captured it? That was Dave that made that motion, right?
What's that?
It was Dave that made the motion, right?
Yes,
Technically,
you
okay.
said it, yes.
Mr. Martin moved to appoint Ms. Gambino to the Policy Governance Committee so that the LMH Board has appropriate representation at the TRSU meeting on 9/27.
I think that captures it.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So then we would look for a second.
I'll second.
All right. All those in favor of Dave's motion to assign or appoint Maria to that meeting? Anybody opposed?
Thank you.
Julie, I didn't see your hand. I'm sorry. You were good on the yes? Okay, thank you. All right.
I'm a yay.
All right, that was very confusing, but I think we've got it and I think we're covered appropriately. TRSU report, the big thing was policy governance. I don't think there was anything else exciting that happened there at all.
Okay, so we need a separate motion to thank Dave Winter for his service, to accept his resignation and thank him for his many years of service on this board and before that, the Mount Holly board.
39 for, but yes.
Yeah, that's
All right,
right.
do we do we don't need a motion though, I thought we decided. Or do
Oh,
you?
okay, I don't know.
I think it's appropriate.
Okay.
I don't think it's necessary.
Okay, so Dave has a motion to officially thank and accept Dave Venter's resignation. Do we have a second for that? Second. Thank you. All those in favor? Anybody opposed? Sort of.
The only other question is then, do we need to do something to find somebody?
Yes.
And will you guys take the first step or?
So I talked with Kelly about it the other day. The typical process is you have 30 days. We would put an ad out in the paper saying that there is a vacancy. Anyone who is interested, please supply the credentials. But
Which we still have,
oh, yeah.
we have two vacancies. We got Jen. And so now we have two.
Okay.
Right.
One
So-
for each town.
So we'll put that out. Probably give 10 days for people to submit. The next step is it has to go in front of the town meetings for the towns. They don't get to vote on who is chosen, but they have a right to have input. That input would be brought back to this board, as well as who the potential candidates are. It would be appropriate probably to have them at a meeting and interview them, and then make a decision about who you appoint.
So generally, just what's happened, and I'm sort of speaking to the people hopefully watching who are going to do this, they send a letter to the superintendent and or me, board chair, whoever it is, not just me. And they go to the selectmen's meetings in their respective towns. So if it's the person from Ludlow, which we do have the open spot for, they would go to the Ludlow selectmen's meeting. Mount Holly would go to our selectmen's meeting. As long as no selectman has any reason to object, then they would meet here on October 11th at 6 and have just a conversation usually. And then if there's more than one candidate, we would choose, and hopefully that will be in Ludlow. Correct. It's a Ludlow meeting though, so yes. So the October 11th meeting, anybody wanting to come for that process would go to the Ludlow Elementary School.
I know it says 11 on the agenda, but that's a Friday.
There's no school that day.
And it's a Friday, someone
I
said.
think
It's a holiday weekend.
it's
Oh,
just
it
a
is a
typo.
Friday.
Yeah, it is.
I think it just, it's the 9th that you're referring to.
Oh, it is the 9th.
I think it's just a typo.
Glad somebody caught that.
And so in Mount Holly, the normal time for the select board meeting would have been the night before, which is,
Yeah, we gotta make
Holiday.
sure.
which is, convenient that it's not the day after.
Yeah.
Right?
But it's also a holiday
The
in this
9th.
case, so the meeting might be altered.
Oh,
Monday, the 8th will be a Indigenous Peoples' Day, and I bet they won't have a meeting. Now it's next month.
Right. It's
late this year.
Tuesday the 8th. Okay.
And if anybody's out there who, is interested, I'll be at both of those select board meetings just to explain to the select board why we're there and to try to get us on the agenda. I'll reach out to get us on the agenda now.
Yeah,
So only because I'm the newest member and I'm still learning all this stuff all the time.
welcome.
And the only way I knew about the open spot was because Lisa had mentioned it. So if somebody doesn't see the paper ad and do you keep putting an ad in? Like what happens?
Are if there are other places where folks here feel that people are going to see it, let me know and we'll make sure that it's advertised.
We can certainly
Mount
add
Holly
it to our
Chit Chat.
meeting.
Yeah, the chit chat, the news
And
flash.
the news flash, right.
Friday, when we're meeting on staff evaluation, we'll bring that up and remind me. I can also send it out to the entire school community using our email system. It would be
But
nice to get that.
it off, like Jen, it does often come down to somebody encouraging someone to do it. Word
What
of
do you
mouth.
know? What do you know?
But we'll get it out.
Okay, yeah, I mean, it's a hard, but again, we talked about some social media outlets and stuff, and that's always, that's where people are getting their information, so we better, start putting out some some other
And you
information.
said there's two, there's one from each town.
Yeah. So TRC report, we're good. Policy committee. Last.
There were a couple of policies that were old business, that we're gonna go back and kind of, take a little bit more time to take a look at. There were 4 new policies, that are required by the state, that we're currently looking at. It sounded like 2 of them, the subcommittee, thought were in fine shape to actually present to the board. And so those will be on to the next meeting.
And then we have a meeting October 7th.
This is that. That's a Monday. That might be the holiday.
That's not a holiday.
That's
The
not, the
14th
holiday's
is
the
the holiday.
14th. Okay, all right. Usually my anniversary is the holiday or close by, so that's why I was like, I know it. All right. Facilities committee, we are still trying to get a meeting together. That kind of fell through the cracks between all of us somehow. I don't know, but it did. And so we're working on what day?
I think it's tentatively scheduled for next Tuesday.
Kelly was reaching out, so.
I think I volunteered myself for that
Okay.
a couple of meetings ago. I don't know about the meetings.
Okay.
So
Yeah, they're not, it was.
facilities
Yeah.
meeting, so is it set next week?
It was a tentative, and she was gonna, now she didn't get out this afternoon, probably tomorrow.
Right.
17.
And we should probably also have on our agenda next time to update this, even if we don't have new people, because with Dave gone and there's a lot of gaps and.
Yeah, and I'm not in.
Right.
You guys keep leaving me out as the ones that.
Right, it's not that we're
We're not
leaving
you
you out,
guys.
it's just not getting updated, right? So let's get that on the agenda and make sure that it's updated first, Lane, and then,
Then you can.
then where there are holes, we'll put Jen out.
Gotcha.
Okay, and then policies approved at this meeting, none, but it looks like we'll have some next time. Public comment?
Hi, public. Hi. Mary Ellen Maringolo, again. I just want to thank you guys for the thoughtful discussion around class sizes. Thank Emma for that wonderful presentation about curriculum, and kind of just, encourage as you go into the budgeting season. I think that looking at the actual class sizes in each of the schools versus like the staff to student ratio is a little bit more illuminating, particularly in light of thinking about those key foundations to, a classroom and ideas of safety and inclusivity and, feeling, making sure that social and emotional needs are met for learners. I think that with our student population, the smaller class size really helps to allow the teacher to take those steps that are necessary to create that community and create, a feeling of safety where kids can take social and emotional care of themselves and each other and take those risks that are needed to then learn academically, and, feel good about themselves and then eventually get those better test scores too. So, thank you all for your work. I shared. I know. I'm just there.
It's empty.
I know. But thank you.
Any other public comments?
I just have one. I go back all the time to the portrait of a graduate, and that is so social emotional driven. There isn't anything about your test scores. It says, something about so you can achieve academic success or something, but, so many of those bullet points are social emotional. And, this is our value that we're talking about. So, you just have to think about that when you're making decisions. Because that's what you said you wanted. So help us get that for you.
Didn't you also mention that an innovation that Lisa was on, this is speaking like
Right.
that? Start something like that.
Dave was.
Oh, the innovations committee.
Right,
Yeah.
which we did say we were gonna start and,
Right.
Yeah,
and so
and I
that should
saw,
also
I
be
saw
on our.
Dave the other day, and he, even though he's stepping down on the board, he wants to be a community member. And hoping Lisa will
You
do
should
it.
run innovations.
Well, he's saying he wants to be part of it.
Yeah,
So
I think that's where,
maybe he'll chair it.
Amber, I think that's where the error was, where I was talking about our names.
Okay. I'll look
Because I
for
wasn't
that.
at the meeting last week, and it says to reach out to Ms. Wilson. And so I was like,
Well, wait, we did talk about you
We
at
did
the
talk
last
about you,
meeting.
though.
I remember
I
that.
know, but I missed Vicky in this meeting.
Copy that. I'll find that and I will fix it.
Sorry.
So that's in relation to the innovations.
okay.
Amber's
All
like,
right, it's Amber, sorry, go ahead.
Dave, I just wanted to, I'm not gonna, because I'm public, I'm not addressing a board member directly. I just want to caution the board about looking through rose-colored glasses at this board composition and thinking, oh, we don't have to do policy governance, only the TRSU does, and only the GM board does, because there may or may not be, there's perceived dysfunction on that side. I've been doing this for a long time, and there was perceived dysfunction on this side and not on that side for a number of years. So it's all, and especially since you've just lost a board member, you're about to get 2 new ones, that can totally change that relationship, and better to have those guardrails in place before you need them than after.
Thank you.
Excellent.
All right, other, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I just had one other thing. If anyone didn't have a chance to see Superintendent Millington's presentation that was here like last week, I think it was on the 3rd. Anyone out there in the public or anyone here obviously on the board, it was a really wonderful presentation about, tax rates and how, local decisions are, really don't stay that local and we're kind of wind up paying for everybody anyway. So we might as well spend for what we need. But that was my takeaway. Maybe I'm.
Yeah, no,
No,
actually, it's pretty good. We had the Green Mountain version of it last night. Okemo recorded it.
Okay.
So if
Great.
folks are interested, it's up
That's
there.
so good.
We got into some other discussions as well afterwards, but it was interesting. A lot of people showed up because they heard from a couple of folks at the meeting.
And I've heard lots of good things about that as well, so thank you.
Hey Kelly, I forgot to mention one thing. All of our schools participated in a partnership with the Flynn Theater, and last Thursday, the 5th, Chester and Roper hosted a circus and jazz band, and it was just an amazing Two Rivers event that families from both Ludlow and Mahali attended. I just wanted to kind of let you guys know that it was a great evening, kind of like a back to school celebration for the whole Two Rivers.
Nice, thank you. All right, other comment?
Noticed that the open house for Ludlow is the same date and time for the open forum in Ludlow that he's scheduled for next month. So I don't know if that's
At the same time?
6 to 7, 6 to 7, October 1st. October 1st.
Yeah,
That's our open forum.
Oh, open house, I'm sorry, my brain was stuck on meetings.
But he
Right,
has scheduled that open forum that they
Right.
did at Mohali. So he scheduled that for next month.
The same time, so we might want to revisit that. We'll make sure that
I
he,
didn't mention it in a
Okay.
different meeting, but I don't want it to go unnoticed.
right, yeah. Yeah, and we want people to be able to go to both, for sure. All right, I think we can move on though, and he'll come back in and we'll just mention it again, yes? Okay, so our regular meeting is not October 11th, it is October 9th. It will be in Ludlow. People wanting to join the board would have to go to the selectmen ahead of time, and then be at that meeting to be appointed. Okay, all right, and, oh, go ahead, you have something?
No, I said sounds great.
Oh, okay, and then, why am I reading this from here? I can read it from here. All right, board members were given and have read the agenda, background materials prior to the meeting.
Yes.
Better than last month, thank you. And that was to me. Board members are respectful of each other, the public and the administration. Board members handled conflict openly and constructively. Board members focus on the role and responsibility of the board. And board members act as a team once a decision has been made and work collaboratively throughout the decision-making process. All right, we'll make a motion, or I'll
Move we adjourn.
there, that one.
Second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.